Hello and welcome to the Wooden Ball Show. I'm your host, Dave Ball, also known as Blinson on Reddit and at Blinson1 on Twitter. And like always, I am joined by my partner in crime here, Blake Wood, as he is known as at BTownBomb on Reddit and at ChatMyKirk on Twitter. How you doing, Blake?
Hello, hello.
You doing good?
Yeah.
Good. Today we will be only covering the Philadelphia Flyers portion of our weekly interview. It seems we weren't able to get a Blue Jackets fan or a Hurricanes fan, so we will be moving them to the end of our list. Their interviews will be taking place after Chicago Blackhawks and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So without further ado, I guess we will get started. Let's hope I'm ready for this.
I hope you are too. Um, there wasn't any news this past week. I'm pretty sure a couple things have occurred.
Nothing big really when it came to the Flyer for overall. Is there anything? Well, we have a few signings. I guess we'll cover them, don't we? Uh, Braden Holtby re-signed for a how much was that deal? Uh, he got like 5-6 million. It was 6.1 million, I think it was, for 5 years.
Yes, a 5-year deal.
Yes, so that I mean we all knew he was gonna get money. I'm surprised he actually went for that long because I figured he would go with a shorter, like 2-3 year deal bridge contract, and then he'll get paid. But he went for a full 5 year deal, so
Today, the New Jersey Devils re-signing defenseman Adam Larson a 6-year, $25 million deal.
mhm. Nice little deal there. Apparently, Stepan is very far away from his asking deal with the Rangers. He wants 7.25, while the Rangers are offering 5.2. From what I understand, they only have six something in cap space, so we'll probably be seeing him get somewhere around that.
Oh my.
I mean, he is their top line center, if I remember correctly. So
The Montreal Canadiens yesterday agreed to terms with forward Alexander Semin for a
right,
1-year contract. Um,
$1.1 million, I think it was.
yes, very
Low risk, high reward. I mean, he's a good player. He's just commitment issues, I think, is what the biggest problem with him is.
perhaps.
But for $1.1 million, you can't really go wrong on a 1 year deal, especially. So, was there anything else that's happened recently? Uh, Yesterday was the anniversary of the Shea Weber offer sheet, and that was a fun time to be part of to be a Flyers fan. It was very weird during that whole week following up until they matched 5 days later.
I'm telling you, though, it was the plan all along to get Shea Weber to play for Peter Laviolette.
Yeah, it eventually happened. I mean, with that contract, it was more so if we can't have him, no one can. And with how much money that contract was worth, no one's gonna want him. Especially with how front loaded it was, the cap recapture penalty for a buyout or anything, or if he is injured and tries to retire, it would be around $6.9 million, I think, towards the end of his contract to if he retires early. So that was a massive offer sheet. So what else has happened?
This from 2 days ago. Lou Lamoriello, the
Right.
former general manager, part-time head coach, president, I believe, of the New Jersey Devils.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, just a mainstay in the New Jersey Devils front office.
Mm-hmm.
He will be the new general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, that was very surprising. No one saw that coming. I mean, in typical Lou Lamoriello fashion, it was very out of the blue, very quiet, and I'm surprised that he left. He was the only general manager New Jersey's ever known, and then he moved up to their president this offseason. So he was president for like maybe a month or two before he left. But from what we can tell, it looks like he is there to help train the general manager, their assistant GM.
Here's a quote from Lamoriello in, I assume, the press conference or something, naming him the general manager. He says, "The thing that has driven me all of my life is winning. The commitment that the Toronto Maple Leafs have made when they brought Brendan in and brought Mike Babcock in. To me, the only success that can happen is having success. Winning doesn't happen because you say it. Winning happens because of everything you do that leads to it."
Yeah, he's. I feel like he's gonna be good to train whoever's there. I mean, it's a very weird situation seeing him away from New Jersey Devils front office. Not something I'm used to at all. So, but at least he is. But he already turned the GM reins over to Ray Shiro. So.
And 4 days ago, more expansion talk.
Right.
The league officially announced it has only received 2 expansion applications from Quebec City and Las Vegas. Seattle, Kansas City, they did not submit expansion applications.
I know the biggest problem with the Seattle said their biggest problem was how they only had 2 weeks to get everything ready, and they needed more time than that. So they will be hoping that the NHL opens up expansion later on in maybe a year or two. They open up another expansion. But, I know Las Vegas. They went underneath. They yeah. Their expansion was the group that's buying them is called the Black Knights. So do you think that's like a thought of what their new name's going to be?
It's more or less, it's got to be something casino term.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they're going to be heavily influenced by the casinos. I know that's probably a lot of casinos are probably going to be giving out tickets for their games. So, and then Quebec is the Quebec owners, the people that submitted the expansion. They have said that they want to bring the Nordiques back. So the Nordiques might be their name there, which no one really expected anything else but that. So.
Which one of these 2 cities, Dave? Which one do you think? I guess makes the most sense.
Of those 2 cities, I mean, I can see them both making sense. I mean, Las Vegas makes sense, and it is not like there's no sports in the city. They want to make a mark there. There's new fans to be had from there. And in the opposite with Quebec, there's no new fans to be had. They're already fans of hockey. They're always going to be fans of hockey there. But it is a team that's going to sell out constantly and will bring money that maybe people from there were maybe just buying jerseys and not spending money on tickets, because the closest team is what Montreal Canadiens out there, and they might not be close enough to them there. So it'll bring money that way in.
I'll put it this way then. Which one do you see? Would you see gaining the most revenue for the league?
That's honestly a very difficult question. For the most revenue, I can. Quebec's going to bring in the more of the 2 of them. Quebec would bring in more money, but Las Vegas would. I gotta go with Quebec bringing in more money.
I think the value of the Canadian dollar right now, I think that would have a factor in that, definitely.
Sure. But the thing everyone talks about with Las Vegas, it is an untapped sports market. It could bring in a lot of money that way because it's the first sport to ever really go there. I think there may have been a sport team there over like a while, or maybe a minor league, but this is the first major league sports team.
Yeah, they have minor league hockey, they have minor league baseball there, but to get one of the four major North American sports leagues and get a team in there that's going to be big. And you and I did discuss a couple times in the past when back in the rumor stage of this. And you brought up a good point many months ago that I still remember. Right now, all there is to do in Vegas is go to the Strip, go to casinos, gamble all your money away. You get a sports team in there, you get a more lively, a more diverse setting in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something to do besides, oh, we'll catch an early game, it'll be done at 10 o'clock, and then we'll hit the casinos. That's something you could do. It's change something up a little bit because, I've been to Vegas before, and going to casinos every single night is pretty boring, in my opinion. But, that could just be me. But, yeah, I feel like it would be it would help. It's going to take a while for hockey to catch on, but I think once it does, if it does, it will be cemented there, and it will pull in other sports teams because they'll see that this is sticking. But we will always be the first to give Vegas a chance.
Now, my answer to that question, I might have to go with Quebec as well, because I think the fan base that would come from it would probably trump the value of the Canadian dollar. They would get so much fanfare and so much money that eventually it'll stack up, no matter how devalued the Canadian dollar right now is. I mean, let's face it. There would probably be a bigger fan base of a hockey team, an NHL team in Quebec City than in Vegas. I just fully believe that.
Yeah. Of the two, isn't Las Vegas slightly bigger than Quebec City? Because with Las Vegas, besides the tourists there, they're gonna have a bunch of people living in the city. So, which one is bigger? Las Vegas, the population is the metro population is close to 2 million, with Quebec City has about how big is Quebec City? Quebec City has about a population of not even 800. So uh, Las Vegas has the ability to have more people wanting to go to these games. Yeah, Quebec City is actually really small, isn't it? So, what are your thoughts on that, Blake?
I mean, the strength in numbers is there, but again, I, I just really cannot see a way that more people would be going to Las Vegas hockey games than more people would be going to Quebec City.
But with Las Vegas, you have the transplants. All the people that just go in there for a week that are hockey fans that want to see their team, that want to just see a hockey team. I mean, when I flew in from where I am, I could want to go to a hockey game if I go there. That could be a place for kind of like how Florida is for the snowbirds. That could be what Las Vegas becomes and brings in more money because of how it's in a main city. It's part of the downtown strip, which will help bring in a lot of money for the team. It's not like Sunrise in Florida where it's out in the middle of nowhere.
I suppose, and I hope I'm proven wrong, but right now I just see a bigger fan base in Quebec City simply because of how the entire country of Canada, not just that particular area, is crazy for hockey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it's worth trying out both. The worst comes to worst, we move it to a city that might want it. We could move it to, it could be the future Seattle team. It could be the future Kansas City team. It could be put in Austin, which has been rumored. So we could we'll see what happens. I mean, it's an experiment. All expansion teams are experiments to see how it works. I mean, they got the commitment for the season tickets very easily, so yeah, we'll see what happens there. I'm hoping for both teams to work, though. I wish Quebec City wasn't so far east because the alignments are going to be terrible now. With 17 in the east and 15 in the west, it will be terrible. It's already difficult enough to get and now it's uneven divisions, so it's even slightly more difficult for all divisions to get in. Each division has a different chance now. So we'll see what happens. All right. I guess it's time to head. Did you have anything else you wanted to cover?
No.
So let's head into the interview.
Okay. First, we begin with just a brief introduction into the Philadelphia Flyers, into their past season.
Mm-hmm. So, this past season, it was a very up and down kind of season. We saw really the breakthrough of Jakub Voracek this year as a close to, if not an elite player. I'm not sure if he's considered elite yet because he's only really had one amazing season. But early on, his play was probably the only thing we were looking forward to on a daily basis. Steve Mason started off struggling this year. Claude Giroux was slightly struggling. Basically, the whole team was struggling, and the loss of Scott Hartnell kind of was felt early in the beginning because he was one of the players that could keep this team, what's the word I'm looking for? Like jovial, can keep it loose in the locker room, and they kind of seem to have lost that. And plus, with the loss of Kimmo Timonen over the offseason with his blood clots, his loss was felt even more because he was a vocal leader in our locker room, and everyone kind of listened to him when he did talk. But as the season kind of progressed with our team, it kind of slowly started to turn around. It looked like we had a chance at the playoffs for a while there. I think it was from right before the All-Star break, the game against the Penguins, all the way to I think in March, we didn't lose a single game in regulation. Every single loss we had was in overtime. So there was a while there where we were looking like we could make it. We were getting a push. Jakub Voracek had slightly come down to earth, but Claude Giroux was playing great. Steve Mason was playing lights out. We had a team that could build, that looked like it could do it, but we couldn't do it in the end. Obviously, we missed the playoffs this year. But overall, we had a lot of our players kind of took a step back in this offseason with the coach, Craig Berube, thankfully being fired at the end, which I'll get into later when we talk about the coaches. But we had Sean Couturier kind of taking a step back. Brayden Schenn was kind of average. Umberger, who we got through the Scott Hartnell trade, was not as good as we thought he would have been, even though we didn't think much of him to begin with. And Vincent Lecavalier just hasn't been living up to what we've hoped he could be. So it's kind of, I guess, a brief overview of how this season went for us.
One constant, however, a constant bright side was the continued success against the in-state rival, the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yes. We haven't lost to them since, what was it, September of 2013, I think was the last loss we had to them. And it was a glorious sweep we had of this year. And much of those games, I think all but one were multi-goal games that we scored more than one goal against them and had a more than one goal win, is what I'm trying to get at. I think the last two games played against them, we won 4-1. And it's amazing how great we are against them, and I love it. The Battle of Pennsylvania is a great thing to be on when you're on our side of the state.
Now, this particular part fascinates me because, the Flyers against the 28 other teams, not as good, but playing against Pittsburgh, amazing, as you mentioned. Haven't lost in over 2 calendar years.
Almost 2 calendar years. It's not September yet.
Mhm.
So we don't play them until January, so it will be 2 calendar years.
Now, is this kind of like the current state of the Boston-Montreal rivalry, wherein Montreal they're in Boston's heads? Just kind of talk about um, why you think the Flyers have been so successful against the Penguins, and yet not so much against the rest of the league.
It's very easy to point out why we are. The Penguins team right now lacks depth, and we have a very good defensive forward in the name of Sean Couturier. We put him out against Malkin, and Malkin is silent. We put Claude Giroux against Sidney Crosby, and for some reason, and Claude Giroux is very underrated in his defensive abilities. People don't realize he is actually the best face-off person in the NHL right now. He had the best face-off percentage in the NHL last year. He is very good defensively also. We put them two together, and Claude Giroux shuts down Crosby and helps set him up. And once those two of their players get shut down, the rest of their depth is not able to pick it up like our depth can. If our top line of Claude Giroux and Jakub Voracek gets shut down, we have Wayne Simmons and Braden Shen on the line behind them. We have Sean Couturier and Matt Reed on the line behind them. And on our fourth line, we have Pebbles and Vandevelde, who have somehow had a very amazing chemistry together. And the two of them are able to do some great things together. So it's because of our depth against their depth, it doesn't match up for them. That's kind of my thought process on it. And even more so this year, I know the Penguins got Phil Kessel in the trade, but they got rid of even more organizational depth to do it. So I have a feeling it's going to continue the same way this year.
I just find that rather fascinating to me.
Also, your thought process of the Flyers are not doing good against other teams is slightly wrong. When it comes to the Detroit Red Wings, we have not lost to them at home since '97.
Oh yes, oh yes.
And
Yeah.
with the Dallas Stars, with Kari Lehtonen in net, he has only beaten us one time in his entire career, and that was this year. So we have that also to go for us. Yeah, it's weird to see how much in the heads I guess we are of the Penguins, because you can tell that they get frustrated with it, with how their all games go, and it's glorious and I love it. So
There. I guess what I'm trying to say is, uh, to an outsider, it seems to me that Philadelphia and Pittsburgh as well, they they play each other one way. Their games go one way, and yet when they play most other teams in the league, it's almost like they play a completely different. Well,
style
yeah,
type thing, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, with our two games, you can kind of think it as defense doesn't matter. And with the other teams, they kind of realize, oh, defense does matter with these games. But against the Penguins, you don't need defense. You just need to score 6 goals and you're a win. I think that's kind of how our teams kind of match up. They think the more goals, we want to kind of embarrass each other with the score, I guess is how to put it. That's kind of what it seems to me. They want to try to embarrass each other by running up the score. And because of that, defense gets thrown out of the way, and that's not how you play all games in the league. In all games, you kind of have a defensive battle. I guess that's the way of putting it, too.
All right. Okay. And now we'll head into the unit breakdown from this past season, and we'll begin with the forwards. As you mentioned, the first season without Scott Hartnell, and you said the absence of him was rather evident. However,
in the locker room, yeah.
Giroux and Voracek, still managed to put up decent numbers. We also saw the uh, a bit of breakout performances from Chris Van de Velde, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, and
Pebbles. Yeah.
uh, talk about those four players in particular there, and then the rest of the offense from the season.
Okay. Well, you start off with saying Claude Giroux and Jakub Voracek. The two of them are magic together somehow. I don't understand their chemistry. They're just gingers and they work together very well. But I mean, Claude Giroux can be when it comes to playing with them two. I mean, you can do very. The two of them can just do things with the puck, and it doesn't really matter who they're playing with. I know you saw Jakub Voracek finally make a breakout year this year, where he, for most of the season, was leading the points race. I think up until towards the end of the season, he finally, I think it was around March, he finally dipped to second place in the points race, and that's kind of where he wasn't as hot as he was in the beginning of the season. Towards the All Star break, he kind of started to slow down as teams started to get more defensive as the playoffs neared. But him and Claude Giroux play great together. Claude Giroux actually didn't do as well as he has in the past. But I think not really for this entire season. The amount of points that players have gotten went down this season. I think this is the first season where no one got 90 points. I believe it was. But Jakub Voracek led our team with 81 points, with Claude Giroux right behind him with 73. This is the first time I think since 2009 Claude Giroux didn't lead our team in points. But the two of them were great together. And the other two you mentioned were Pebbles, who is Bellemare. We've heard him as Pebbles because his name is obnoxious to spell. And then we have Van de Velde. The two of them they were very surprising. We signed Van de Velde, I think last year it was, as a depth player. We thought he was going to end up in the AHL for most of the season. I think he was in the AHL for parts of the season last year. But this year he made the team, and him and Pebbles were put together on our fourth line, and then they were playing on one of our penalty kills together. And they just have some type of chemistry that they have, and they are able to know where each other's on the ice. They're able to defensively take anything away from people, and they were probably our best penalty kill this year. I know that's very surprising, but Matt Reed had a down year this year, so our penalty kill on that side, on him and Sean Couturier, wasn't that great. But Van de Velde and Pebbles kind of stepped it up for them, and our penalty kill wasn't that great this year. It was towards the bottom of the league for the first time in a couple of years, but it's going to slowly start to turn around this year. For the other players on our team, let's go through them. Next to Claude Giroux and Voracek, we tried to host the people, but in the end, we kind of set it on Michael Raffl, who is our he's one of the only reason that he kind of settled, I think, on that line is because he is fast enough to keep up with them. Most of the players we tried, Braden Shen, we tried there. We tried Wayne Simmons for a bit there. We tried Vincent Lecavalier there a bit. But he was the only one that could really keep up with Voracek and Giroux. So that's kind of why we settled with him there. And he ended up scoring 21 goals for us, which isn't bad at all. He wasn't there on that top line for the entire season. So with a full season behind with them, he'll probably score more than that. On our second line, we had it bounced around a lot, our second line, but I think in the end we kind of settled with for a while it was Scott Lawton in the middle with Braden Shen on the left and Wayne Simmons on the right. And those three our second line has never been the best in recent years because we never really have had a constant center. Ever since Danny Briere kind of went down in his production, our second line has always relied on Wayne Simmons doing Wayne Simmons things. And Braden Shen's trying to slowly figure out how he fits into the NHL. We're still waiting on his breakout season, and hopefully it will be coming this year. He's very young. I think he's only 22 or 23. He's 23 years old. So we're hoping that he will eventually start to break out. He got 18 goals this year with 29 assists. So eventually, once we find him a constant center, or once he moves back to center, that's his natural position, hopefully him, Wayne Simmons, and whoever's on that left wing or who's ever on that center can kind of slowly start to pick it up. Our third line was Sean Couturier centering Matt Reed and RJ Umberger. RJ Umberger was bad this year. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He was nowhere near what we thought we hoped he could be. He drug Sean Couturier down a lot this year. We kind of slowly put some of the blame on him for the kind of meltdown that Craig Berube had about Sean Couturier. And on the other side was Matt Reed, and he played most of the season hurt. So his production was nowhere near where we thought he would be. Since he joined the league, he started getting at least 20 goals, but this year he only had 8. So hopefully he'll be slightly more healthy this year, and him and Sean Couturier can kind of find this magic they used to have together, because the two of them were a great duo to have on our penalty kill or on our third line. They were great together. They knew how they understood each other. And on our fourth line, we had Van de Velde and Pebbles on the sides, and their left wing kind of switched a bit. It was either Vincent Lecavalier, or towards the end, it ended up being Ryan White was taking over there. And Ryan White was a great pickup by Ron Hextall. He works as hard as anybody I've ever seen. And he is decent in face-offs. He is a great penalty killer. And I'm very happy that we re-signed him this year. But Ryan White, Pebbles, and Van de Velde are probably going to be our fourth line this year. The three of them are probably going to be really good together. So I think that's all the forwards we had. I think overall I would have to give the forward core a probably C plus B minus for the way that everyone kind of wasn't living up to the expectations outside of Claude Giroux and Jakub Voracek.
And now at the blue line, the Flyers defense, a rather intriguing unit, to say the least. For starters, you start out the season with Kimmo Timonen and Braden Coburn. They're not members of the Flyers now. Michael Del Zotto had a decent season there. Just those three players in particular that I can think of. Talk about their impacts on the team, and then talk about the rest of the defensive unit.
Okay. Well, first off, you started Kimmo Timonen. We all love, in Philadelphia, we love Kimmo Timonen. That is not something unheard of. You could tell by how much the Flyers were rooting for the Chicago Blackhawks when he came back. But to start the season, Kimmo Timonen had blood clots in his legs and his lungs. So he wasn't able to start the season with us. He wasn't able to skate for, I think it was 9 months overall. But we sorely missed his leadership this year. He is one of those guys that, was slightly quiet in the locker room, from what I understand. But when he talked, he kind of captivated the room. And he was also the reason I think our penalty kill was so great. The guy is really, really smart when it comes to hockey. And he knows how to run a penalty kill like nobody's business. And I think the reason that our penalty kill kind of fell back this year was because he wasn't running it when he was out there. He was our number one defenseman for many years. He was an unsung hero in Philadelphia. Everybody loved him. We were all very sad to see him being traded away before playing one game in a Flyers jersey. But we were very happy when he won the cup. It was an amazing situation to watch him win the cup finally. Going on to his longtime defensive partner, Braden Coburn. Braden Coburn is... I really like Braden Coburn. He was great when he was here. He was a 2-3 defenseman on many teams. He can play big minutes. He was okay with handling the puck. He was a decent skater. He knew how to control he knew what he was doing on the ice, but for some reason, the NHL media and some Flyers fans that didn't really understand the game thought he was not a good player for some reason, and it was honestly stupid for them to think he was a good player because of how good he was for this team. We are going to sorely miss the amount of minutes he takes up. We're going to miss how good he was on the penalty kills. He was our best penalty killer, hands down. Once Chemo went down, he became our best penalty killer, and that is not a lie. He is a great player to have, and while I'm happy that he was traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who will probably win big, who are going to be great this upcoming season, and he has a chance to go far. We're going to sorely miss him, and a lot of Flyers fans are going to see what he has done for this team. And then finally, you mentioned Michael Del Zotto. Michael Del Zotto came into the team as a replacement part for when Kimmo Timonen went down. No one in the NHL really wanted to give him a chance because of how he was kind of dealt with once he was traded from the Rangers to Nashville, and the Nashville not sending him a qualifying offer, make him a UFA. No one really wanted to give him a chance because he looked like he was damaged goods. But with how our situation went down, Ron Hextall decided, let's give him a 1-year deal. We're probably not gonna make the playoffs this year. It doesn't hurt to have him on our team. We need another player to come in. And Michael Del Zotto did a great job for what we thought he was going to be. We didn't think much of him coming in, but when he started to play, you could tell he had a chip on his shoulder. He wanted to show he belonged in this league. Then when him and Luke Schenn were together, about from December on when those two were together, they played great together. It gave Luke Schenn a chance to calm his game down because Michael Del Zotto is very good with the first pass. He is very good with handling the puck, which is something that Luke Schenn was never good with. So it honestly was a low risk, high reward situation, and we got a very good reward for for us bringing him in. Going on to his defensive partner, as I said, Luke Schenn. Luke Schenn this year did a lot better than what people were. He because of his trade with JVR and how JVR has kind of blossomed in Toronto, he is always going to be shit on by this media and by the fans who don't really pay attention and understand hockey. But Luke Schenn has done a lot better since he's come here than what they expect him. But because he's a defenseman that got traded for a forward, everyone's going to have higher expectations than a defenseman should have. He is not the type of player. Luke Schenn will not go out there and get big goals. He will not score. He is a defensive defenseman. He is great on the penalty kill for us. He also blocks a lot of shots. And he actually has a very decent Corsi, if I remember correctly. So he has done a lot better than I honestly thought he would be this year. I thought he was on his way out. And I honestly see him being traded this year because he's on the last year of his deal. We have Mark Streit as our number one defenseman. And he put up 52 points this year, which is a lot you can ask for a defenseman. He quarterbacked our number one power play, which was in the top 5 in the league, I believe, at the end of the season. He understands how to control a puck. He understands the game. We can't ask for much more than Mark Streit. He has a very high value. He gets us a lot of points, and he's a good number one defenseman that we have. He's not going to go out there and be great defensively. That's not his game. He's an offensive defenseman. But we paired him up with Nick Grossman, who is not that great of a defenseman, to be honest. But he was able to kind of simplify his game a little bit with Nick Grossman because no one's going to want to go near Grossman because he will crush you. So Mark Streit was able to kind of focus on the offensive game when he was here. And I really enjoy Mark Streit. I hope he stays here for his full deal, which I think he has 2 years left on now. Our other defenseman, as I said, Nick Grossman. He was one of our worst defensemen this year, if not our worst. He's just really slow. His type of game doesn't work in today's NHL. If you were in like the 90s NHL, it would work a lot better because of how slow he was, and it was kind of a dead puck situation for them then. But nowadays, with how fast forwards are, he isn't able to keep up with them whatsoever. And Craig Berube had kind of a love affair with him, I guess, and never scratched him, even though he probably should have been scratched over Andrew MacDonald or Luke Shen or Michael Delazato. And and Andrew MacDonald, he is not living up to his contract. I guess the best way to put it. You know, when you sign a 6-year, $5 million per year contract, you're kind of held up to a higher expectation. And he has actually himself come out and said he didn't live up to his contract this year, and he will be doing better. So let's hope he can do better. He was scratched for a number of games this year, even though he was doing a lot better than Craig Berube gave him credit for. He's going to be one of the most hated defensemen in Philadelphia until his contract ends, most likely. And I kind of feel bad for him there. And we had two other defensemen signed. We had Nick Schultz, who came in as a seventh defenseman and kind of played his way into the lineup that we had this entire year. He kind of shuffled between being on a pairing with Mark Streit, being on a pairing with Luke Shen, was also every once in a while on a pairing with a Nick Grossman. Nick Schultz came in as a seventh defenseman and played his way into a 2-year contract with us as a mainstay on our blue line. So he did a lot better than we thought he would be. And finally, we had Carlo old Splody Bones here. I cannot say that last name. But he came in as our 8th defenseman when we had, at the beginning of the season, we had 3 different defensemen get hurt. So we kind of quickly signed him as our 8th defenseman. And he did decent. He did exactly as what we needed him to do. He wasn't anything special. We didn't re-sign him this year. So that was kind of our defense this year. And I would probably give them also a C. C-C, I think, overall.
I think the one unit that you probably would not be giving a C to here, Flyers goaltending.
Oh, yes.
In Steve Mason. I believe it was you that said in a episode during the season, if you were to put Steve Mason in front of a better team, he would be a nominee for the Vezina.
Easily. I can't even describe how well he did this year for the team that was in front of him, especially. I think the reason that he did not at least get nominated. I mean, we all knew he was never going to win Vezina. That was Carey Price's trophy to lock down. Everyone knew that. But for him to not have been nominated, or at least he didn't even get any votes, I think, in the nomination when the polls came out, like all the votes. I don't think he even got a vote on it because of how low his wins were this year. He did not win many games because of the team in front of him, because they gave him no support, which is terrible because let's look at his save percentage. He was 3rd in save percentage this year at .928. That was his save percentage at the end of the year, and he had a .225 goals against average, which is great for a goaltender. Like, I don't understand how the NHL is kind of ignoring what he's doing because of the team that's in front of him. Having a .928 save percentage, being 3rd in the NHL in save percentage, like, how can you ignore that? He deserves a lot more than he is getting when it comes to our team, when it comes to the hype around goaltending in general. He has revitalized his career since coming to Philadelphia, and no one in the NHL seems to have noticed, except for some of the fans that we deal with on our hockey. They all constantly list him as one of the best goaltenders in the league right now. So people are noticing, but the NHL is kind of ignoring it for some reason. One of the case in points we had there was Mike Milbury went on a tirade about Steve Mason and how he is not doing good this year, which is the farthest from the truth. And, I mean, no one should really be listening to Mike Milbury, but it's the type of situation that kind of pissed me off a little bit because Mike Milbury should know what he's talking about because the NHL employs him to talk about hockey. And I mean, obviously, I'm going to give him an A+, the highest grade I've ever given, like the highest grade you can give a goaltender. That's what Steve Mason is getting in my ranking. The other 2 goaltenders we had were Ray Emery and Rob Zepp. And Ray Emery, he is at the end of his NHL career. That's the best way I can put it. The nicest way to put it. He is not fast going side to side anymore. He can stop the puck, but he cannot go side to side, and that's where 90% of the goals are scored on him because everyone just knows he cannot move that fast that way. So he was decent as a backup this year. He was useful, but once Steve Mason went down with injuries, Ray Emery was not the goaltender you would turn to hold the fort down for a long time, and that's kind of why Zepp was signed in the offseason as our third string goaltender, but ended up starting over Emery many times when Mason was hurt. Rob Zepp came in as our third goaltender, played his way into the NHL somehow, was the first rookie to win his debut game as a goaltender. Was the oldest rookie to win his debut in goal since I think the 50s. I think it was, maybe even before that. But we all loved Rob Zepp. He didn't get re-signed, sadly, but it is what it is. And I'm just gonna give Ray. I'll give Ray Emery and Rob Zepp a C in goaltending because they were average at best for as goaltenders go. But Steve Mason gets 100% an A+.
I'm curious if you were to do a grade of like the unit as a whole, an overall grade for all three of the goaltenders. What would that equate to?
Like that's really difficult because Ray Emery and Rob Zepp were so average and Steve Mason was so amazing. I don't think it would be fair to give it like a B+ situation because Ray Emery and Rob Zepp were not that level. They were a solid C level, while Steve Mason was a solid A level. I shouldn't have to put them together because it would not be justice to either side by putting them together.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just can't do it.
Mm-hmm. And the last unit, the coaching staff, the head coaching position especially, that's the one everybody pays attention to. Now, rewind to the early part of last season. Peter Laviolette is let go after only about a couple weeks, a week or two into the season. Craig Berube comes in. He's the man behind the bench that takes the Flyers from the playoffs to, at the time when he was starting, was essentially a very early pipe dream. However, as it turns out, he only lasted one full season as he was let go at the end of this past season. Kind of talk about, Berube as a coach, and especially I'm curious to know why you think, I guess, it just all of a sudden just didn't work out with him.
Okay. I honestly want to say he was there for full 2 seasons. In all honesty, he got hired 3 games into the season. He was there for a full season. In all honesty, so he lasted 2 seasons behind the bench of Philadelphia. He started off really good, but I think that was more so Steve Mason started to pick up his play a lot, and Claude Giroux turned around. His first season there was more so Giroux turning the team around instead of him turning the team around. He wasn't very good at adapting to different situations happening. He put wrong players in the doghouse, as evidenced by Grossman never being scratched over Michael Del Zotto or Luke Schenn. So I think the biggest thing with him is if he doesn't hold the respect of the locker room, he does not do well as a coach. That was his biggest thing. I just don't think he was ready to be an NHL coach. I don't think he has the caliber within him to keep the players accountable. I know the biggest thing with him was accountability, and he kind of lost that as this season went on. He wasn't keeping the star players accountable for their actions, and that kind of slowly turned the locker room against him. And then as the season went on, you started seeing him saying stupid things, kind of like how he said Sean Couturier was not a good player this year, and how he should have scored more, and that was on him to do. When the coach was the one to go out and put Sean Couturier in all those defensive minutes, he had the highest defensive zone starts of forwards in the NHL, and he was expecting that to work out positively for his offensive production, which is not something that could do. He just didn't kind of grasp some of the basics like that. Like the more times you start a person in the defensive zone, the less offensive production they're going to put out. And another thing I think he more so alluded to this than actually went out and saying it, but he put a few losses on Steve Mason, saying that they were Steve Mason's. No, he actually did say that Steve Mason should have seen two. There was a time where Steve Mason had 2 goals scored on him, and they were slightly early in the game, but both times he was screened by about 3 different people, and they went past him. And Berube put the sole kind of loss of those 2 goals on Steve Mason instead of kind of saying he was blocked. He should have tried. He should have tried better to stop it, but he was obviously blocked. There's nothing you can do about it. He said that you should be able to see, it's his job to see the pucks no matter what, which is difficult to do when they're being screened. So he kind of put a lot of problems that shouldn't have been problems and said them to the media instead of talking to the players personally, it seems. He kind of went the route of saying things to the media and making a big deal about it there to kind of slightly embarrass players. Kind of what it seemed to be. And he was not good at adapting, as I said, to different situations that would have going on in the game. Like he tried to change up lines a little bit during games, but they never were the right changing. Like there was times he put Zach Rinaldo on the top line to try to change things up. Like why would you put Zach Rinaldo on the top line, Craig Berube? In what world is that a good and smart thing to do? That is not going to change any momentum of the game. That is not going to get people scoring. That is going to bring your top line down no matter what. So it's just things like that kind of made him seem not like a good coach and not the right choice to be the head coach of the Flyers. For our other coaching staff, we had Ian LaPerriere taking control of our PK this year, it seems. And it was his kind of first go at being a PK coach. And it was okay. As the season went on, he kind of looked like he knew more what he was doing. And our PK did start to pick up, but he didn't really have the penalty killing defensive personnel to help the PK be decent with all of our players kind of having a bad year in a sense. Our power play, I cannot remember who runs that off the top of my head. I don't see anything here behind with it, but our power play was great again this year. Our top unit is again one of the best in the NHL. Like when you have a top line of Claude Giroux, Jakub Voracek, Wayne Simmonds, and Mark Streit, it's going to be really hard to stop them from scoring with how everything works. We also have Brainshell in that unit, but he doesn't really do much. We tried to put him in the Hartnell spot, which is at the top of the slot there in between the box of the defenseman. And whenever we try to feed him the puck, he always put the puck right to the center, right to the chest of the goalie instead of doing what Hartnell did and putting it in the top corners. So I think with that, it will be more so he'll get used to how to play that spot 2 in our PK. Our second unit is kind of not that great, in all honesty. It had Matt Reed, Sean Couturier on it. I think Michael Del Zotto was the defenseman on it, and I don't remember who else was on that unit because they never really did good, and they were only out for 15 seconds, I think, at most. But that second unit, it kind of needs a major overhaul in how they play, the type of system they play. Our defensive coach, he did as best as he could do with the defensemen as he could. Our defensemen aren't great. Our forward coach, I forget who that is also, he did okay, I guess. Our forwards were not scoring at the pace they should have been. Our goaltending coach. He did amazing, but he left partway through the season, towards the end of the season, because he disagreed with Craig Berube's handling of Steve Mason, even though that's not confirmed. That's why he left, but that's basically, we all think the reason he left was. So overall, I think I would give the coaching overall a D. They didn't really get the best out of our group this year, in my opinion. So, minus the power play coach, he gets an A because he did great.
Now I have I got two follow-up questions about Berube. One, I'm curious to know if he was exhibiting those behaviors that you mentioned in his first season, and two, if so, did you get the feeling that perhaps since the Flyers were doing good and making a legitimate push for the playoffs, that not a lot of people seem to pay attention to that?
For him, I think the way he styled was overshadowed with the reemergence of Claude Giroux. So no one really noticed. He didn't really have to say anything bad because the team was doing good. So he didn't have to call out any players in the media. He didn't have to, try to change things up as often because the team was already stepping up. They were already starting their way back to the playoffs. They were winning. The team was behind him last year. The team and the fans were behind him. We thought, oh, he's good. He can be a good coach this year if he can keep up what he's doing. But this year, once things kind of hit the wall, he kind of panicked and started just doing things that were not intelligent. He was not a good under pressure coach, I guess is the way to put it.
All right.
Yeah.
And that concludes the unit breakdowns as we now move into what has occurred and what could possibly occur as we move on through the rest of the off-season, and we begin with player transactions and trades that occurred in free agency. And since the Flyers only had two trades so far, we'll get to those. The first one happening June the 27th, the Flyers sending defenseman Nicholas Grossman and the contract of Chris Pronger to the Arizona Coyotes, in return getting forward Sam Gagner and a conditional draft pick. Let's talk about that one first, and specifically the part that intrigues me the most, and still does, about this trade is being able to get the contract of Chris Pronger off your backs. I remember last season, last off-season, when I interviewed you then, excuse me, and I asked you about what having Pronger's contract kind of be a burden on the team did, and you listed so many different things that that could be happening but can't because that contract is just a burden. So I'll ask you about it again, and this time the question is, what sort of things perhaps could you begin to do now that the Flyers are no longer in possession of that contract?
In the off season, one of the big things is the teams can be 10% over the cap during the off season. They made 10% over, and with his contract, we were already slightly over the cap. So we are now able to have more space to be able to do things during the off season. We didn't do that this year. We didn't really do much with our cap space. We didn't have that much to begin with anyway, but we were kind of slowly start to be able to. We don't have his contract for the next 3 years, so we will have that much more. We have $5 million and that more a year now to kind of throw at our RFAs, our unrestricted free agents. Like this year, like next year, we have Jakub Voracek, we have Braden Shen, we have Sean Couturier. All three need to have their contracts re-upped. So with his contract now being gone, that's a little bit more money we could spend to them, because now we don't have to worry about being 10% over, because that contract's nothing to worry about. So.
Okay, and finishing the breaking down of this trade, the three other pieces of this trade. Arizona receiving, again, defenseman Nicholas Grossman. The Flyers acquiring forward Sam Gagner and a conditional draft pick. So go over the rest of that trade and your thoughts on that one.
I mean, Sam Gagner, it's a 1-year contract. It's a low risk, high reward situation. He is a player that's kind of been bounced around a lot during this off season. I mean, during the past seasons in general, he's played, for the Oilers. He got traded down to the Lightning before being traded in the same day, like an hour or two later, to the Coyotes. So he is kind of still looking, I guess, for a place in the NHL for him. He is a reclamation project, kind of like Michael Del Zotto was for us, kind of like Steve Mason was for us. He is a player that is bounced around this league, is kind of slightly shit on by the fan bases because he's not doing what we hoped he would be doing, even though he's only 25 years old. Bringing him into the team, he's a left wing, he's a right wing, he's a center. He can play any of the positions, from what I understand. He's going to slot into our top 6 most likely. I think Hextall and Hackstall, our coach and GM, have kind of said that they more so imagine Braden Shen being the center with Gagner and Simmons flanking him. So I honestly think that will be a decent line. The three of them can hopefully be able to find some type of magic together. But as I said, it's a 1-year deal. It's kind of he's a UFA next year. We can just let him walk if it doesn't work for us. It's very low risk. And then getting rid of Nicholas Grossman was quite possibly one of the best things that Hextall can do. We had, going into this offseason, after signing, Braden Manning, after having Michael Del Zotto hopefully re-signed, after getting Radko Gudas as a defenseman in the Braden Coburn trade, we signed a Russian defenseman whose name I still cannot pronounce. Medvedev, I think. I can't pronounce it. We have Nick Schultz on our line. We have McDonald. We have Streit. We have Shen. We had 9 defensemen with all this, and we needed to trade a defenseman to get that 9 at least down to 8. And that's what he did. He sent away one of our defensemen who had an expiring contract. He has 1 year left on it, and it was a great trade to bring in a player also with a 1-year contract, worth slightly less money. I think Grossman was getting $3.5, I want to say, or something like that, or $4 million at least. But bringing in Gagner got a slightly cheaper contract, 1 year, and it gave us a chance to hopefully be able to score more goals, which is not something Nicholas Grossman was going to help us do. And then the pick was just kind of a cherry on the cake. It was kind of just like, great, sweet, we have another pick. It was just something cool to have. I'm not really expecting much for it. I don't even know what the condition of it is. Oh, I just have the condition here. The condition on it is it's a 2017 third-round pick, can be a 2016 fourth-round pick, but the condition is unknown, actually. Never mind. So, but it's a decent trade. Getting Gagner is low risk, high reward. Getting a pick is just like cherry on top, the icing on top of the cake, or whatever the saying is. Getting rid of Pronger's contract is a godsend because we have more money to do things now. And Nicholas Grossman was our worst defenseman last year, so it was a A+ trade all around for us.
Now, I remember when this trade broke in one of our previous episodes, and I was reading.
We were actually interviewing the Coyotes at the time. I remember that.
Yes. So we got reaction from the fan bases right here on the Wooden Ball Show. That was pretty great. But I read off the details of the trade, and I kept seeing these reports coming in that perhaps General Manager Ron Hextall wasn't planning on having Sam Gagner as a member of the roster for next season, that he would immediately be moved off as a piece in a different trade. But lately, that's kind of seemed to have quieted down. Have you been getting the feeling that perhaps he would be suiting up in a Flyers uniform this upcoming season?
I think it's all but confirmed he is. I mean, there was rumors of the buyout that he was going to be bought out by the team. But that did not end up happening. They wanted to give him a chance. I mean, we're probably not going to make the playoffs again this year, so it's worth a chance giving it, like letting him get, letting him work, letting him play, and if he does great, we might be able to flip him for a piece for like a couple picks towards the trade deadline if he's doing really well on our team, or if he finds that kind of chemistry that you don't really want to get away, we could have another big forward piece for our top forward group. I mean, we have a lot of depth on our team, and our forward group, and if he can add to that, that's great for us because, hey, we gave you a chance. You shouldn't be taking a lot of money. Without us, you'd be out of the league. And hopefully he can do good. I'm really happy that they're giving him a chance.
All right, and the second and currently last trade that the Flyers completed, it was 2 days later on the 29th. Now, it was a simple trade. It was a simple trade, a simple player for pick trade, but when you look at the details of the trade, who the player was, what the pick is, who the team on the receiving end of the player was, it becomes simple yet completely fascinating or
and
amusing.
beautiful.
Beautiful to some, yes. On the 29th, the Philadelphia Flyers received a 2017 third-round draft pick from the Boston Bruins. The Bruins doing the unthinkable again and receiving Zach Rinaldo.
Hextall is a godsend. That's all I can say about this. Like, to be able to get anything for Zach Rinaldo, I mean, a 7th round pick would have been good in all honesty. A bag of pucks probably would have been great for Zach Rinaldo in all honesty. A 3rd round pick? Like, that is beautiful for Zach Rinaldo, a player who, while he may have changed the game, he got so many penalties that anything he did would not have made up for it. Him just being on the ice seemed to be a penalty. And he was always at risk for suspensions. He got one this year. I remember a penalty he got this year. He got hit in the face with a stick, didn't retaliate, fell down to the ice because he was just hit in the face with a stick, and he got a penalty because of it. And the other player also got a penalty, but Zach Rinaldo got a penalty for Zach Rinaldoing, and that is something that will never help the team. And to trade him away for anything, it was glorious because, as I said, he was no help to the team by bringing all the penalties he was most likely going to be bringing in. While he was a pest in that sense, he was able to draw penalties. It was no near the amount that he took that he did himself. So I love the trade in all honesty. Hextall is a godsend of a GM.
So there you have it. The Flyers so far slam dunks of a couple trades there. And the other part of player transactions, of course, in the free agency period, losing players to other teams, signing players to your team. The Philadelphia Flyers did a little bit of that. They add goalie depth by adding Jason LaBarbera and Michael Neuvirth, and other various movements. Jason Akeson leaves Philadelphia for Buffalo, just to name one there. But I assume Dave would have a more complete list here. Go over how the Flyers have done in the free agency signing period so far.
For the free agents lost, who have we lost? I kind of forget who we've lost. For the goaltending, we'll start with there. We gain Michael Neuvirth. whose name I cannot pronounce, and we gain Jason LaBarbera. Jason LaBarbera is taking the spot of Rob Stepp as our third string goaltender. He is solely there to help our goaltending prospects, Anthony Stolars, in his development. He's going to be playing with Lehigh Valley and will be called up as a third string goaltender if needed. And he is very good for a third string goaltending role, from what I understand, and I am perfectly happy with that. For Michael Neuwirth, bringing him in was a 100% upgrade of Ray Emery. Like, there is no way that cannot be seen as an upgrade. He is very young. He's a decent goaltender. He can back up Steve Mason and be able to give Steve Mason a break if needed. And I am very happy that we were able to sign him in, because we signed him to a 2-year deal worth $325, I think, overall. I think that's the way it kind of fell down to. But I'm proud of it. I'm happy that we're able to bring in that goaltender as a backup. He is going to give Steve Mason the ability to rest and slightly kind of push him to be better, even though our GM has already come out and said this is not a signing to kind of do a 1A, 1B. Steve Mason is still our number one goaltender. We don't have to worry about that. We also have the rest of the signings we kind of did were depth signings. We signed a guy named Tim Brett, who last played in the KHL. He's going to be on our AHL team. Davis Druiski, he played with the Canadiens last year. He's going to be in the AHL. Colin McDonald, he was on the Islanders last year. He's most likely going to be the AHL. The other players we lost 5 players this year. All of them not that big of a deal in my opinion. Zach Storatini, he was in our AHL team. He's an enforcer. Not that big of a deal. We lost him, though. He was a very vocal guy down here in Lehigh Valley. He wore the A on his sweater. He was very involved in the community. It's going to be sad to see him losing in that aspect, because he seemed to be very respected by the team. But we lost him to the Ottawa Senators, who signed him to a 2-year deal. Jason Akeson, is a nothing special type of player. While he led our AHL team in points, I believe, or at least was second behind Nick Cousins. I forget which. He didn't do anything well enough to stick in the NHL. He was okay defensively, okay skater. He was an okay offensively. He didn't excel in one thing, and on top of all that, he was a shorter player. He didn't weigh as much as other players, so you could always find someone who was bigger than him that could do the same exact things as him, which is kind of why he didn't really stick in the NHL. We lost Blair Jones to the Canucks, not a big deal. He was in the AHL. Splody Bones, we lost to the Sabres. Again, he was our 8th defenseman, not that big of a deal. Then Oliver Lawson, who a lot of Flyer fans loved him for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. But he came up during our lockout shortened season when we were terrible, and kind of tried to cement himself as one of our top prospects, and a lot of fans fell for it, thinking he was amazing, when in reality he was just better than the other people on the team at the time, because everyone was hurt. So everyone thought he was a lot better than he was, but kind of saw it this year in the AHL. He didn't really take a step forward to cement his place in the NHL. He wasn't that great, in all honesty. He was average at best. He was never going to make the NHL team. So losing him to the Sweden Hockey League was not that big of a deal either. We lost 5 free agents. None of them really hurt our team whatsoever. But we re-signed Chris Vandevelde to a 2-year deal, which makes us very happy. We love Chris Vandevelde here. Him and Pebbles are great together. Re-signed Ryan White, which was a big thing. A lot of Flyer fans wanted that, because he was also very good for us towards the end of the year when he finally started playing after having he tore his pectoral muscle in the offseason last year and didn't suit up for the Flyers until I want to say February, March kind of, after having a little bit of a stint in with the Phantoms. But he was great for the Flyers. He can penalty kill. He can take face-offs. We loved him here. He's the type of player that Flyers fans tend to love. And then finally, we signed Michael Del Zotto to a 2-year deal worth $3.875 million per. And we wanted Michael Del Zotto to be re-signed, so we kind of did everything we needed to do during this offseason, and it's great.
And before we move on into the NHL draft, one more transaction addition occurred with the Flyers. However, this time behind the bench, as we mentioned, Craig Berube was let go after 2 seasons. In comes Dave Haxtell, who was previously the head coach of the University of North Dakota. He makes the immediate jump into the National Hockey League. Now, I'm curious to know specifically if perhaps there is maybe a little bit of concern that maybe a culture shock, I guess would be the term, that a culture shock would occur, and going straight from the NCAA to the NHL, straight to a head coaching gig there could perhaps be too much for a Hackstall.
Honestly, yeah, we're all very concerned with that type of thing. This situation has only happened, I think, was 3 times in the history of the NHL that a coach went from the NCAA directly to head coach in the NHL, with the last one, I think, being Herb Brooks. And we're all very concerned, but with him, though, he did amazing in the NCAA. All 11 years he was head coach there, they went to the playoffs. And in 7 of those 11 years, they were in the Frozen Four, which, if you don't know, is the conference finals, I guess is the best way of putting it. And I'm not sure if they ever won it. Though, yeah, it looks like they did win it. But it's honestly, he has the pedigree of winning behind him. We're kind of worried what is going to happen behind the bench if he is ready for the NHL, but it doesn't hurt to give him a chance. We have veterans behind the bench as their assistant captains to kind of help him, assistant coaches, to help him along the way to kind of teach him. We were all hoping that Terry Murray, the AHL coach for the Phantoms, would come up to be an assistant coach, but that never happened. Terry Murray ended up signing with Buffalo as one of their assistant coaches for Dan Ballsma there. But we're concerned to an extent about Hackstall and how he's going to do, but we're more so excited to see kind of a different perspective that he's going to bring in. He's not a former NHL player. He's only went as far as the International Hockey League. He's not a former Flyer in any sense of the word. So he has an outside of organization perspective that could hopefully help coach this team to a better place. And on top of all that, he has the winning pedigree from the NCAA, with going to the playoffs 11 times out of 11, with being the Final Four 7 of those times.
I suppose a more fitting term then would be cautious optimism.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best way of putting it, yep.
All right. And now we move on into the NHL draft. Took place in Sunrise, Florida this past month. The Flyers, with 2 first-round picks, picking 7th overall, they draft defenseman Ivan Provorov.
Yes, he is.
With the 24th overall pick, they get a center. It's Travis Konecny. Talk about those 2 picks, the rest of the picks, and also going into the draft, what Flyers fans and perhaps the media and whoever would have liked to see the Flyers pick up.
I mean, going into the season, we wanted Provorov. Going into the offseason, we wanted Provorov. That was our goal as Flyer fans. We wanted him. He was the one the fans wanted. He was the one obviously Hextall wanted. He was the one that the scouts wanted, and we got him. We got him perfectly at number 7 as we wanted. He has already said that he is ready for the NHL. That's kind of what the talks about him are. That at 18 years old, he is ready. and he is honestly he's tied for our top defenseman in our depth pool with Travis Sanheim, who is going to be a stud, honestly. And then we have the two of them as 1A, 1B, and we love him. That we love that we drafted him. We love that we got him. He Cheese or Provolone, as we like to refer to him as, he is going to be great for us, and I cannot wait until he's ready. But he's most likely going back to the WHL this year because of our logjam on our defense. And Hextall has already said unless one of our picks really stands out in a way that there is no way you can send him back, that's where he's most likely going to go back to the juniors. And then we have Konecny. I think that's how you say the last name. But we were originally going to draft 29th until right before the 24th pick. Ron Hextall makes a trade and get with, I think it was the Leafs, I think it was, and he trades this pick and a second round pick to take Konecny. And we honestly, Flyer fans were ecstatic about it because we have seen clips of him, and this guy is basically a Drew 2.0, as we're referring to him as. He is small, but he is quick. He is creative with the puck, and seems really intelligent. And we already are kind of we're ecstatic about him hopefully being on the team in the near future. He's a right wing, which is going to make it slightly difficult. We are very, very deep on the right wing. We have, Voracek on our top line, Simmons on the next line. So it's kind of going to be difficult to displace them. But from what I understand, he has also played left wing in his short career. So hopefully we can fill him in somewhere. But we are ecstatic about him coming to this team. Next, in the third round, we ended up drafting Felix Sandstrom, and in all honesty, this is just a move to kind of restock our goaltending depth. Going into this draft, we only had 2 goaltenders in our system. That is Anthony Stolarz, who was with the Phantoms, and then I forget his name, Masterson or something like that. He is currently in the NCAA as going to be a sophomore this year. Last year he only played 1 game, so he is still very, very early on in his development. So we drafted Sandstrom, we drafted Tomek Mate, I don't know how to pronounce that, and then we also, as a goaltender, drafted Ivan Fedotov. Again, I can't pronounce names. Those are 3 goaltending. We drafted them. They're more so a drafting to restock our goaltending depth. In all honesty, I don't really know much about the other picks we have, but we drafted a left wing, which is something we're not that deep at all in our prospect pool, which is great. We drafted another center. I think this is one of the first times we ever drafted 2 Russians in the same draft, so that's very surprising to see the Flyers do. David Case seems to be a very good center that we have. He's very defensively oriented, pretty creative with the puck. Seems like a middle 6 type of player. So hopefully he can be something of a steal.
So you add to the goaltending depth, you get Provorov, which is who most of Philadelphia had the strongest desire for. You get another first-round pick, which of course is always pretty good. You get a left wing, which, as you said, is a position you're not very deep at. So with all that in mind, how would you grade the Flyers' performance in the draft?
Easily an A. Hextall hit. I mean, a lot of the insiders and all that have said the Flyers have drafted amazing these past 2 years. Hextall has been an amazing drafter, and I love what he has done with this drafting. He has started to redo our depth in our organization, which is something we haven't really seen since kind of Paul Holmgren took over, and we moved up all of our depth from the AHL to the NHL, with Mike Richards, Jeff Carter, the original RJ Umberger being moved up, back when Joffrey Lupul kind of started off with us, Ninamaki, we haven't really seen an influx of strong drafting in a long time in Philadelphia. So this is great for what Hextall is doing.
All right, and as we look ahead towards the rest of the off season, mainly towards the rest of the last few days of July, most of August, do you expect to see any more magic from Hextall, or are the Flyers pretty much set?
I think the only thing he's going to constantly try to do is, trade away Vincent Lecavalier or trade away RJ Umberger. That's really the only thing he can do for the rest of the offseason. We have slightly over $500,000 in cap space left, so we can't really do much. So I'm not really expecting much for the rest of this offseason unless Lecavalier or RJ Umberger can be traded away.
Oh yes, the situation there with Vincent Lecavalier. That one fascinates me a little. Give us some insight into that and what, if anything, you could see occurring there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lecavalier signed with us in hopes to be our second line center under Peter Laviolette. I mean, he probably would have been decent with Laviolette's system, which is a very high attack, high focus, run and gun, no defensive style, which is something Lecavalier probably would have been decent at. And last year he scored 20 goals for us, so he was good last year in that sense. But he was pushed around the lineup a lot, which kind of left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And then coming in this year, he only scored, I think it was 8 goals, I want to say. Let me look that up quickly. Lecavalier, he scored... Where is the name? Actually, he scored 8 goals for us, 12 assists for only 20 points. He did not do well at all this year. He, for the first time in his career, was a healthy scratch. He was bouncing around the lineup a lot, didn't really fit into our team, which is kind of why he started to be the organization, and then the fans slightly started to turn on him. Which I do feel bad for him because he was an all-star player. He was one of the best players to play the game when he was playing in his time. He captivated this league. He was a Rocket Richard Trophy winner. He won a Stanley Cup as one of the big names of his team. And to kind of be reduced to a healthy scratch towards the end of his career is really sad to see. And I think the biggest problem with him is his contract. He signed a 5-year contract for $4.5 million a year, which is not what he's worth whatsoever. And that is kind of the reason the organization is turning on him. If the contract wasn't as high, it wouldn't be that big of a problem. We could trade him away easier for something random for a team that might need a voice in the locker room. But he's just not as good as he used to be, and it's really hurting his trade value.
So you see this as sort of nearing the end of his career, and that contract is the main thing that's making it difficult to ship him off somewhere else, perhaps.
That's honestly the biggest problem with him. I mean, he's still good on the power play. He still has that rocket of a cannon of a shot that he had for his entire career. He's just not able to keep up with the NHL kind of right now. He's slow, and that's his biggest problem. But if you needed a power play specialist, he'd be the player you go to. And his contract, no one's going to trade for a player who only plays on the power play and is being paid $4.5 million a year. That you don't trade for that type of player, as sad as it is, especially when they have 3 years left on the contract. If this was his last year, we'd have no problem trading him away.
All right, and with the off-season portion now complete, we're into the home stretch here as we gaze into our crystal ball and look at what some of the expectations are for the upcoming season. First, we begin with taking a look at the Metropolitan Division, taking a look at the moves that the rest of the teams have been doing. The Flyers last season finished with a 33, 31, and 18 record, 84 total points, 5 behind Columbus, good for 6th in the division. And Columbus, they had Brandon Saad there. Pittsburgh, they had Kessel. The Rangers, the Capitals, the Islanders, they're making moves. The Flyers also have made moves themselves. Pretty much every Metropolitan Division team, they've made some high to mid-profile moves. With how the Metropolitan is beginning to stack up on paper right now, where would you see the Flyers finishing and stacking up against the rest of the division?
We're probably going to be in maybe the same exact spot as we were last time. Honestly, I can see us maybe moving up one spot, but we're not making the playoffs again this year unless Hackstall has made some amazing system he's going to implement. We're probably not going to make the playoffs again. So I have us finishing about the same exact spot this year coming up.
Now, so you see another 6th place finish, and you see another, not another playoff berth.
Mm-hmm.
Would you perhaps see maybe a little improvement still?
Oh, yeah, we're going to improve. We shipped off our worst defenseman, and it's going to help out a lot. We get to see kind of a revitalization of Sam Gagne's career, hopefully, and hopefully that will help us out. Hopefully he's going to somehow become Simon Gagne and be amazing and loved. And Steve Mason is going to continue being amazing. He's going to have a very competent backup behind him. So we won't go into a game where the backup's playing and think, oh, we're going to lose. It's Ray Emery playing, as we were thinking this year. So we're going to improve, but I have a feeling we're going to stay at the same exact spot as we were.
And going further ahead into the next trade deadline, 2 factors. Could you see where the team is at right now, plus any drastic things that could occur to the team? Do you see them playing into the trade deadline? And as it stands right now, do you see the team being buyers or sellers at the trade deadline?
We would be sellers. I see us trading Luke Shen away. Who else is on a 1-year contract that we could trade away? Luke Shen could mostly be traded away. If Sam Gagne has turned it around, he will probably be traded again because he's in his last year of his contract. Luke Shen's in the last year. Mark Streit might be traded away at the end of the deadline because he has this year and next year on a contract. He is a very good defenseman to have for power play. He is very good at putting up points, so I can see him most likely being traded away too.
Now, you mentioned Sam Gagne. There's a factor that if something were to happen during the season, if Sam Gagne was to not be bad per se, but not meet expectations, just be kind of average, would you see him just simply being traded away?
Yeah, I could see. Honestly, I feel like he's going to be a rental piece for us and another team. I could see him being traded away unless we are so blown out of the water with him, we want him to be a part of our team. That is the only way I see him not being traded. Us being so blown out of the water and him having such amazing chemistry with, Braden Shen or Wayne Simmons that we can't really trade him away because we'd be losing too much.
All right.
Yeah, I can see him being traded.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and the last question here, I believe. Discuss the playoff window for the Flyers right now. a couple questions here. The first question being, with the moves made in the offseason, trading away Grossman and Ronaldo, adding some goalie depth, adding well, adding goalie depth, trading away Grossman and Ronaldo, and adding Hextall behind the bench, has the playoff window shifted from the end or from last season to right now? And second question, what is that playoff window currently?
I see us starting to make the playoffs in the 2016-17 season. I see us really making a push then. But I honestly see us starting to become cup contenders around maybe the 2018 season. Because around that time, our defensemen and our prospect pool are going to start coming up to the NHL. I mean, this year currently we have Robert Hagg in the AHL for his second year. He was kind of average this year. He was put in because of the call-ups we had. We had Brandon Manning being called up, who was our number one defenseman down there in the AHL. And we had Mark Alt, who was our number two defenseman, come and go with injuries a lot during this season. So Robert Hagg was thrown into a position that he wasn't really ready for. But once he kind of solidifies in his role, he'll be coming up very soon. And also on the AHL, that we have Shane Gostisbehere. He is going to be a stud offensively as a defenseman. But, last year he was set back because he partially tore his ACL. But going into the training camp we had this year, it looked like he had no ill effects from it. He was still doing great. And then this year in the AHL, we also have Sam Morin, the Giant, being added to our AHL roster this year. And him and Shane Gostisbehere are most likely going to be a pairing. And if you don't know much about Sam Morin, all you really need to know is he is 6'9" off skates, 6'11" in skates. And at 225 pounds, he looks very, very thin. So he is going to be a massive player. He is very good at skating for somebody his size. He is very good at handling the puck for someone his size. And during training camp, everyone was getting all the other players in the training camp were getting pissed because they weren't able to get anything past him as he was defending them. He is going to be an amazing defenseman, and him and Gostisbehere are finally going to start to slowly get chemistry together. And I am so looking forward to when those three come up. We still have, Ivan Provorov and Travis Sanheim being in juniors most likely this year coming up because they are too young to be added to our AHL roster. And once those the five horsemen, as we refer to them as, because we don't have a better name anymore since they used to be referred to as the four horsemen. But once those five come to our team, our defense is going to be stacked because these players are all basically, except for Shane Gostisbehere, they all were thought to be number one first round draft picks, with Robert Hagg falling to the second round, though only I think 5 picks into the second round. And Shane Gostisbehere was a third round, if I remember correctly. But that is already considered to be the steal of the draft that year. So once these 5 players come up, our defense is going to be revitalized, and I think in the 2017-2018 season or 2018-2019 season, we will finally be cup contenders once these guys all get up.
Mm-hmm. So now, has the immediate changes to the team this offseason, has that improved that playoff window?
Nah. I think, honestly, our forward core is great. Once they all kind of start to click together again, they will be great. So any changes to that are really going to be minor. But the biggest changes we need are for our defense, and that is what we're waiting on. And this offseason, we added Yevgeny Medvedev. Again, still can't pronounce, but he's 32 years old. He is been said that he was the best Russian defenseman in the KHL, and it's been seen that he can easily slip into the top 4 in the NHL. So we're kind of the jury's out on him, but our defense is still, a ragtag bunch of overplayed players, and hopefully with the infusion of youth coming in, that is what changes our defense to make us cup contenders. And with our goaltending we have as right now, that is easily going to stay the way it is. Steve Mason isn't going to fail anymore. Once he gets better goaltending, he'll be even better, and hopefully finally be seen as the Vezina Trophy candidate that he should be seen as.
All right, and as we close things out here in summation, the Philadelphia Flyers, they did not have a good season last season. Dave here expects the slight improvement, but not very many changes in their standing position, and yet the Flyers appear to be on the cusp of greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, it is 4:40 p.m. Central Standard Time. That makes it 5:40 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yep.
And we are now entering the closing portion of this show. We want to thank our host Dave again for playing the role of interviewee this afternoon for the Philadelphia Flyers team overview. And Dave, yes.
Go ahead. Next week we are going to be having the Sharks and the Avalanche, and I feel like the Sharks interview is going to be fun.
The Sharks interview, it was certainly fun last season.
Oh yes, but this year it will be even more fun because we get to talk about kind of what happened, everything that kind of resulted from last season, off season.
Yes, very dynamic things going on in that organization.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, for the Wooden Ball Show, I am Blake. You can find me on Reddit. My username there is BTownBomb, and you can find me on Twitter. My handle there is @ShatMyKirk. Our host Dave, you can find him on Reddit. His username there is Blinson, and you can find him on Twitter. His handle there is @Blinson1. For our hockey cast, a announcement. I'm sure most of you listeners were perhaps starting to get the general idea. But just to make it official here, the Mighty Dave and Ari show, co-hosted by the three Daves and Ari, it is officially in a hiatus for the remainder of this off season. So
figure around August, maybe September, when the preseason starts back up, we will get going again.
Mm-hmm. So for the time being, it's just the Wooden Ball Show, the weekend drive here, keeping you up to date on your latest hockey news and information. And for our HockeyCast, you can find us on Twitter. Our handle there is @OurHockeyCast. You can find us on Reddit. Our page address there, that is Our HockeyCast. You can find our website, ourhockeycast.com, where you can browse archives of various shows and episodes. And you can do that same thing on our YouTube channel. Our name there is Our HockeyCast. For Dave Ball, I am Blake Wood. This has been the Wooden Ball Show, and we are signing off.
Have a good night, everybody.